Hey, welcome to Genune Recaps. Today I am going to explain Death Game, a South Korean fantasy reincarnation television series. It depicts the story of a person who is in the midst of frustration, begins a new life with death. Let's start the movie. Movie starts with Choi Yee-jae, who is asking the death, "What mistake did I make?" Then a goddess of death is shown who says, "You called me before I called you." Then she shoots him on his forehead. While falling from the sky, Yee-jae opens his eyes and a flashback is shown. 7 years before, Choi Yee-jae is on the way to his final interview at Taekwondo Group before graduating, but his life changes after a man dies in front of him. After a while Choi goes for interview, but Choi could not stop thinking about that man and performs very bad at interview, due to which he gets rejected. After struggling for 7 years of doing small activities and living a poor life, shortly, Choi prepares again for the same interview with Taekwondo Group. The interview goes well. Shortly after, Choi Yee-jae gets out and is informed that all the money he invested in the market has been lost, as the boss has fled with the money that mentally breaks him down. Choi gets to the boss room and starts punching with fire extinguisher, but is intervened by the policemen, who arrest him and take to police station, but after few minutes he is jailed out. While away to home, he finds his girlfriend Jisoo being dropped out of car by some guy. He thinks he is not perfect for her and decides to get breakup with her, and when he reaches his room he finds his all equipments thrown out of room because Choi have not paid the room fare for a lot period of time. He gets lonely and frustrated too. Finally Choi Yee-jae decides to end his own life and jump from a building. He awakes in somebody's body, sitting on a luxurious plane, and meets a mysterious being called Death. Feeling insulted by Yee-jae's last will of jumping from roof of building, Death punishes him to die 12 times, and his soul will occupy 12 individuals' bodies facing imminent death. If he prevents the death of the body he enters, he can live with it for the rest of his life. Yee-jae refuses to live again. Then a floating orb appears, and it transfers the memories and abilities of the body's original owner to him. Yee-jae decides to live again after viewing Park Jin-tae's memories, who was a chaebol heir of the Taekwondo Group. However, Jin-tae died shortly after the plane exploded. He returns to the place like hell again. He was saying he don't want to live, but Death wanted to taste him the feeling of death, and he is shooted by Death. Then Yee-jae then enters the body of Song Jae-seop, who took part in a challenge to land safely without a parachute with a monetary reward of 300 billion won contract made with $1 billion. He died, however, as soon as he hit the ground with his head. Yee-jae's sin is great enough to even anger God, and he must find out what that sin is. But if he fails to figure it out, he'll go to hell, even after surviving the remaining deaths. He enters Kwon Hyuk-soo's body, a high school student who was being relentlessly bullied and bitten by Lee Jin-sang and his teammates. Hyuk-soo was praised and raised by his mother, as his father died a long year before. While Hyuk-soo was writing the suicide note and about to fall from school roof, Yee-jae enters his body and reads the suicide note. He cries when he reads that note and thinks of helping Hyuk-soo. After a short period of time, Hyuk-soo is confronted by the bullies, but he fights them back but gets bitten by one of the strong fighter, who bits him too much and again taken to bully. After the school finishes, he makes a plan to take step against bullies, so he meets that white shirt guy who beat him too much, and make a deal to help each other. Next day, while having tiffin, Jin-sang starts to bully Hyuk-soo again, but none supports him. Therefore Hyuk-soo pours the noodle on his head. He feels shame and calls his seniors next day. Next day in the room, Hyuk-soo is confronted by Senior Sof Jin-sang, but the scenario gets upside. When the senior sees Hyuk-soo as a young boy, Jin-sang is thrown out of gang. The plans get successful. Everyone takes revenge on Jin-sang. As he finds a way to survive, he returns to Hyuk-soo's house and suddenly remembers his mother. He looks back on his past self and just wants to have a job, get married, and start a family like everyone else. His plan to make Jin-sang an outcast is a success. And when everything is going smoothly, Jin-sang, who is greatly humiliated by his downfall, attacks and repeatedly smash Hyuk-soo on the head with a brick until he dies, and Yee-jae fails to survive for the third time. He then enters Lee Joo-hun's body, who was captured after stealing the boss money but escapes using a motorbike. The organization is hunting down Joo-hun. Now as Joo-hun, Yee-jae manages to survive and escapes the manhunt, and he meets up with his lover, planning to elope with her with the money. However, the lover betrayed him and shot him in the head, and Yee-jae fails to escape death for the fourth time. Yee-jae was reincarnated as Cho Tae-sang, a former mixed martial arts fighter who was jailed for a fatal traffic accident, but in fact, Tae-sang was not the real culprit, and he was only accepting a lawyer's offer to take the blame for someone else in exchange for money. Coincidentally, one of Tae-sang's cellmates was Lee Jin-sang, who was found guilty of murdering Hyuk-soo.
Tae-sang went on to successfully exact his revenge on Jin-sang. However, as Tae-sang threatened his lawyer that he would expose the truth, prisoners were paid to attempt to murder Tae-sang, but he managed to survive and was released 4 days after Yee-jae entered his body. Upon his release, however, Tae-sang was killed by his cellmate, who was also secretly paid to kill him, rendering this Yee-jae's 5th failure to evade death. In his 6th life, Yee-jae woke up as a 5-month-old baby. The baby was murdered by his parents, who neglected and abused him. Yee-jae's 7th life immediately commences, and enters the body of famous and handsome model named Jang Ji-yu. He then recovers the embezzled money that Joo-hun stole from his boss. At the coffee shop, Yee-jae reunites with his first love, Lee Ji-soo, who becomes a novelist and publishes an award-winning novel based on their romantic relationship, despite their breakup. He came to realize that Jisoo still loves him and regrets both the breakup and the decision to commit suicide, seeing that his mother and Jisoo were grieving his death. Yee-jae finally told Jisoo his true identity and that his stories of reincarnations and deaths are true, and just when Yee-jae was about to continue telling Jisoo the truth, a car ran over and killed Jisoo, and causing Ji-yeon to be seriously injured. The driver turns out to be Jin Tae's brother and Taecom Group CEO Park Tae-yu, who is connected to him and the 4 bodies he entered. After Tae-yu killed him, Yee-jae reawakens again in purgatory and swore revenge against Tae-yu. He confronted Death and aimed the gun at its forehead before a gunshot was heard. Death, who didn't die from the gunshot, mocks Yee-jae while mourning to the death of Jisoo, who's destined to die in Tae-yu's hands through a car crash. Yee-jae plans to kill Tae-yu to avenge Jisoo, but Death warns him that she would sentence him to hell if he commits murder before shooting him. Yee-jae was reborn as Jong Gyu-cheol, a talented painter and serial killer who murdered 15 people and used their blood to create his artworks. When Tae-yu offers to buy him a new painting, Yee-jae sees it as an opportunity to get closer to Tae-yu. He subdued Tae-yu to Gyu-cheol's mansion and art studio, intending to kill and dismember him using Gyu-cheol's method. Due to Gyu-cheol's brain tumor, however, Yee-jae faints and is tied to a table bed, where Tae-yu brutally cuts off his limbs before killing him. Death mocks Yee-jae for suffering the most brutal death he has experienced so far, but he bursts into laughter as in truth, he secretly filmed the murder of Gyu-cheol as evidence to bring down Tae-yu. In Yee-jae's 9th life, he enters in Ji-hyung's body, who is a police detective, akin to his father, who aspired to be a great policeman. However, he prioritized his life over his duty, leading to his colleagues' disapproval. Yee-jae, under Ji-hyung's persona, arrested Tae-sang's murderer and got praised by the public. Yee-jae went to Gyu-cheol's mansion to collect evidence of Tae-yu murdering Gyu-cheol, as well as exposing Gyu-cheol's crimes. Yee-jae then approached Tae-yu and promised to bring him to justice, but the director of a TV station covered up the truth. Tae-yu surrendered himself for killing Gyu-cheol and lied about being a survivor of the serial killer. After Tae-yu was released due to lack of evidence, Yee-jae exposed all of Tae-yu's crimes with the evidence he gathered using his past memories. He then sent Tae-yu on an exploding plane as how he killed his younger brother Jin-tae but gives him a chance to survive by using a parachute. As Yee-jae about to suffocate Tae-yu to death, he was stopped by Jisoo's memories. Yee-jae decides to just leave, but Tae-yu tried to kill Yee-jae before a truck crashed onto him. Tae-yu loses his legs and is in a half-vegetative state due to an accident. Yee-jae, who wanted revenge, exposes Tae-yu's crimes and arrests those who helped cover up his crimes. Yee-jae then lives as Ji-hyung for a few months before sacrificing himself to save a colleague. He is reborn as a homeless man and attends the funeral of Ji-hyung, who is remembered as a heroic detective and icon of justice. Yee-jae, who by then no longer hoped to continue experiencing the cycles of death and incarnation, falls in despair before he accidentally falls off a flight of stairs and died again. Afterwards, Yee-jae becomes an ordinary office worker, who is the same person he witnessed dying 7 years ago. After dying, Yee-jae faces Death, who tells him he has one final life left. Yee-jae decides to end his life and head to hell, finding no reason to live. After Death fired the last bullet, Yee-jae reawakens and to his horror, he finds himself reborn. Yee-jae becomes hysterical after seeing his mother's memories, including her heartbreak over his death, and realizes the pain he caused her. He also realizes that this is what Death is trying to make him understand, that his sin led to premature death, causing pain and suffering to his loved ones. Yee-jae learns about his mother's resilience despite her difficult times and her regret for not being a better mother, causing him to feel a deeper remorse for his actions. Yee-jae decided to go hiking on a mountain where his mother and late father used to go when they were young,
and although an accident occurred, Yee-jae survived and went to live for another 32 years in his mother's body before finally dying a peaceful death. Reuniting with death, Yee-jae wants another chance to live again as himself to compensate for the suffering his mother endured. Feeling touched that Yee-jae finally realizes his sin, Death agrees to allow him to live as Yee-jae again and declares that his punishment is over. The scene ends with Yee-jae standing on the same building where he jumped to his death and took his mother's phone call. Thank you for watching. Please comment and subscribe for more content like this.